Hey, what is up, everybody? We got episode 4 of this NFL podcast. Episode 3, the third episode I filmed on this channel, was literally a year ago. So sorry for the short absence. I am back at this rate. We'll be back again in 2026. But there are a ton of different things I want to touch on today. Some of them will be the Micah Parsons Cowboys situation, which is just getting more and more dramatic as the days go by. More information coming out earlier today / last night from Jerry Jones. Then I'll touch on Terry McLaurin, the Commanders. Are the 49ers contenders or pretenders? Are the Eagles overrated, or are they still elite after winning a Super Bowl? And then the final two topics: will Drake Maye lead the Patriots to the playoffs? And then finally, will the Broncos win the AFC West? And if one of those things sounds the most interesting to you, I will have this timestamp. So feel free to watch the whole thing or don't. Do what you will. But to start off here, I want to go over some information regarding Micah Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys. This has been a very dramatic scenario. If you've seen some of my takes on this other places, I think this is going to get done right before the season. Just like last year with CD, just like last year with Dak. Jerry Jones loves the entertainment factor of the Dallas Cowboys, and this is playing out to be just that, and I think it's all going to end right before the season starts. But of course, we have to have all this drama, all this controversy to keep people talking about the Cowboys, as is typical. And here's from Tom Pelissero yesterday morning, who said Schottenheimer is confident that Micah Parsons will be out there week 1. I saw that Schottenheimer made that clear. And then, quote from Pelissero, however, from my understanding, there is still no movement in terms of a contract extension that is expected to make Parsons the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. And then he continues on here, there is still no communication between the Cowboys and Parsons' agent about trying to get a deal done. And Jerry Jones also went on to Michael Irvin's YouTube channel on Thursday and was talking with Irvin for a while. And here's an excerpt from that, some information from that interview from Todd Archer, ESPN, who says, while speaking on Michael Irvin's YouTube channel Thursday, Dallas Cowboys owner and general manager Jerry Jones said the agreement he believed he made with Micah Parsons, quote, would have made him the highest paid guaranteed player other than a quarterback in the NFL, end of quote. So if this is the case, it sounds like Jerry has already given Micah this incredible offer, because just my first thought on that is if you're offering him the highest paid guaranteed contract other than a quarterback, that sounds like a good deal for Micah Parsons. And so the problem right now seems to be that Jerry Jones does not want to talk with Micah Parsons' agent, David Mulligetta. And we also have this from the article from Todd Archer. He's a quote from Jerry Jones, who said, when we wanted to send the details to the agent told us to stick it up our bleep, Jones said, just so you're clear. And then final quote here from the article from Todd Archer, from Jerry Jones, quote, I've agreed to give more money than has ever been given in terms of guaranteed money than anyone ever has as far as a defensive player. So the issue between Micah Parsons and the Cowboys does not seem to be, I don't know if there necessarily should be an issue here, because if I'm Micah Parsons, I'm getting this kind of offer, if it's true what Jerry is saying. If you're getting this kind of offer as Micah Parsons, it sounds like a good deal to me. So I'm not sure what Parsons wants his agent to iron out with Jerry Jones, but if what Jerry has said is true, it sounds like it's a good deal for Micah Parsons. Maybe they're trying to push it even more than that. And it does sound like Jerry's trying to keep it between him and Micah. And it sounds like that's how Jerry Jones has operated lots of his career. It seems like with him speaking with Michael Irvin, like Jerry has been involved with lots of these players, these star players, and sort of negotiated the deals just between the two of them. And it sounds like a big selling point for Jerry in these discussions is trying to sell like the long-term, benefits of being a Dallas Cowboy, being a star, because seemingly, you can sort of always rep the Dallas Cowboys brand. And it sounds like even when you're done playing, if you sort of, keep this relationship with Jerry Jones, you're going to have tons of opportunities. So it sounds like Jerry's trying to do that. As I said, I think this is all going to get done in the end. I think this is just a lot of drama. I don't think it's necessarily fake drama. I just think that both sides need this to get done. The Cowboys have the leverage. They could franchise tag him for the next 2 seasons if they really wanted to. And we've seen this happen time and time again. So my guess is, in the end, a deal gets done, and all this is just noise before the season starts. Now on to Terry McLaurin, another situation that doesn't seem quite as hectic, but I do think that in this negotiation with Terry McLaurin, I do think the Commanders may have to slightly overpay McLaurin for where he is in his career based on his age and based on his production, but I think it's totally worth it to overpay him slightly, just because when you have a quarterback on this rookie deal, like you do with Jaden Daniels, you can't take the kind of risk of letting Jaden Daniels' top target from his rookie season end up leaving and going somewhere else. It's just not it's not the time to take a risk like that. And my guess would be that Terry McLaurin knows this, which is why he's sitting out and really trying to maximize how much money he can get in this negotiation. But here's from Tom Pelissero yesterday, who said, there have been negotiations between McLaurin's agent, Buddy Baker, and the team, but the sides have not been close at this point on a deal. And, of course, McLaurin has already requested a trade. We also have another quote from Pelissero. Doesn't sound like Washington has seriously explored that option. They still anticipate having McLaurin on the roster in 2025. The big thing is McLaurin is turning 30 in September, and so he's a little bit older than some of these other guys, other receivers who've gotten bigger deals recently. And here's what McLaurin is looking for per Nikki Jabvala from The Athletic, who says, one person with knowledge of McLaurin's contract negotiations said the veteran receiver has asked for more than DK Metcalf, who signed a 4-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers earlier this year. And Metcalf is currently at about $32.99 million per year, which makes him the 4th highest paid receiver in the NFL. The difference here is Metcalf is 27 years old and McLaurin is about to turn 30. So I get the Commanders just right off the bat not saying, hey, we're going to pay McLaurin a ton of money because he is a little bit older. But as I said, it's way too risky to try to move on from him and try to replace McLaurin just because of what he's already done with Jaden Daniels. And with Daniels being on a rookie contract, this is a situation that teams can really maximize these moments just because you're not having to pay quarterback $50+ million per year, which I bet by the time Jaden Daniels is eligible for a contract extension, he'll probably be making $60+ million. And so right now, when you have him on a cheap deal, you need to keep McLaurin around. So I would expect them to get a deal done. I expect it to be higher than they want. Maybe it's around $30 million, even though according to Diana Rossini from Scoop City, who said most decision makers in football fall between that $27 to $28 million range. I have a hard time finding anyone who's given me the number that I think that McLaurin camp is asking for. So my guess would be whatever McLaurin's asking for, they come in slightly lower than Terry McLaurin in that situation, and he's just too important for them to take this kind of risk with the current situation they are in. So now moving on to the 49ers. Are they contenders or are they pretenders? So last year they go 6-11 in 2024, which was much worse than they had been in a few years because they've consistently have, one of the best defenses in the NFL. And that was not the case in 2024. They went from the 3rd best scoring defense in the NFL the year prior to 29th. So nearly one of the best to one of the worst in the entire NFL. I don't think the offense was a majority of the issue. They were worse. They were 13th in scoring, though, 4th in yards, so still not too bad. But the defense was really struggling. There are a lot of changes here for this 49ers defense going into this season. One of the biggest ones being Robert Saleh is back, and I do feel like he is one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. And so no doubt, bringing Saleh back should change what we saw last year from this 49ers defense. And even if they didn't make any type of, moves in the draft in free agency, I still think just the presence of Saleh could move this defense up like 10 points when it comes to scoring just because of how good he is. But looking at some of the stats last year for this 49ers defense, they were 23rd in EPA per play allowed in 2024. The year prior, they were 8th in EPA per play allowed at 23rd. And when you look at the rush yards allowed per game, they were 14th in rush yards allowed, or rush yards per play allowed in 2023. And then that dropped to the late 20s in 2024. And they just really declined in every area. And one of the biggest problems, which hadn't been a problem for a long time in San Francisco, was their pass rush. 2023, 10th highest pressure percentage in the NFL, according to NFL Pro. They dropped nearly 10 spots. They dropped to 19th in pressure percentage in 2024. And so, we all know, in the NFL these days, it typically comes down to how good is your pass rush. We saw just how important having a great pass rush is in the recent Super Bowl. The Eagles just completely destroyed the Chiefs in their offensive line, consistently pressured Patrick Mahomes. And that had been the case. The 49ers for a long time had one of those top tier pass rush units. And when that starts to decline, everything else starts to fall apart. And that's what happened last year. And before the 2024 season, they lost Eric Armstead. They lost Chase Young. And in 2023, the year when they were still around 10th best pressure percentage, they had 5 different players, according to PFF, with a greater than 10% pass rush win percentage, including Chase Young and Eric Armstead, who ended up, not being there. And then in 2024, they go from 5 guys with greater than 10% pass rush win percentage to only 3 players with a greater than 10% pass rush percentage. So their depth when it came to their pass rush just, took a big hit there. They did decide to address some of these problems in the offseason, mainly in the draft, drafting Mikael Williams, 11th overall, Alfred Collins, round 2, CJ West, round 4. So it looks like going into 2025, they are really going to have to bank on some of these rookie players coming through and having big seasons, which, getting a guy 11th overall, you should expect some kind of production here. But I still think there's some uncertainty with this pass rush. I don't think that they're automatically going to get back to what they were in 2023, even though I do think there, should be some improvements. And then looking to the 49ers and their offense, they did lose Deebo Samuel. Currently, the 49ers have a ton of issues at wide receiver, just with tons of different injuries. Ayuk is going to be missing the beginning of the season. You also have Aaron Banks gone. And then if you look at 2024, there were so many injuries on this Niners offense. Ricky Pearsall only played 11 games. McCaffrey 4, Ayuk 7, Trent Williams missed 7. And despite all of that, they were still the 13th best scoring offense in the NFL. And so in my mind, I feel like the Niners are going to get back into the top 10. I think they could be a top 5 offense once they're fully healthy, once Ayuk comes back. And we saw in 2023, they were pretty much the most effective offense in the entire league. 3rd in scoring, 1st in EPA per play, 1st in EPA per pass, 2nd in EPA per rush. And looking at some of those advanced analytics, 2024, they were still pretty solid. 10th EPA per play, 9th EPA per pass, 9th EPA per rush. And so considering they did that with all the different injuries, I think that they're going to be much better in 2025. And a big thing is, can Christian McCaffrey stay healthy? Because if he can get back to what he was in 2023, then this is easily going to be a top 5 offense in the NFL. The question is, can he get over these injury problems? Is his age going to hold him back? Can he be the guy he used to be? Those are some questions that I guess we will get an answer to once the season starts. And even with the Niners, losing a guy like Deebo Samuel, I think some of these 49ers wide receivers are slept on. I think Juwan Jennings doesn't get the respect he deserves. According to fantasy points data, guys with a minimum of 100 routes, he was 14th in yards per route run last season, which is 1 spot ahead Jamar Chase, 1 spot, it was higher than CeeDee Lamb as well, and he had the 17th best route win rate in the NFL. So he's a very, very good receiver, and so once he's healthy, he's going to produce at a high level. And I also think Ricky Pearsall, hopefully staying more healthy in year 2, will take a year 2 jump. And so I think the 49ers are fine when it comes to their pass catchers. Of course, George Kittle is George Kittle. No debate there with how good he is. And, looking at Brock Purdy's overall numbers in 2024, they did take a dip down, from 31 touchdowns, 11 picks 2023 to 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions in 2024. He went from 1st in passer rating in 2023 to 13th in passer rating. I really do think a lot of that had to do with so many of his weapons being injured, because a lot of other areas he was still very effective. He got a little bit better when it came to completion percentage over expected in 2024. His accuracy percentage, which is a fantasy points data stat, which measures like highly accurate throws, it was nearly the same, which not great. 32nd in 2023, and then 34th in 2024. So he needs to work on that area of his game a little bit. And then when it came to the pressure Brock Purdy was having to deal with every single game, fantasy points, 19th in pressure percentage in 2023, and it got slightly better in 2024 at 15th. And so I do think that this is going to be a top 5 offense in 2025 with these guys coming back, with Pearsall in year 2. I think Brock Purdy's a very good quarterback. I think he deserves the money he got, and he may not have the same athletic talents of some of these guys like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, but I think that he's a quarterback that could win you a Super Bowl if you have, you still have a lot of these same talented players offensively. I think the defense should get better. So overall, I think this is going to be a team that's contending. I see them getting back to the playoffs. I think the big question for me is how much better will this defense get? I mean, it would be hard to be worse, and I think with Saleh, with some of these draft picks, I think they should at least be a middle-of-the-road defense. And if this offense can do it, I think they can. I think this is going to be a playoff team, and that's sort of my whole take on the 49ers situation. So I think they could probably win 11 to 12 games once again. Now to the Philadelphia Eagles. Are they overrated or still elite? They're just coming off a Super Bowl victory, and so, of course, they get the benefit of the doubt in lots of discussions just because of them, actually succeeding at the highest level, which only one of 32 teams does. They were very, very good last year on both sides of the ball. Second best scoring defense in the league. 7th best scoring offense. They destroyed Mahomes and the Chiefs in a way that I honestly didn't even think was going to happen in that game. But there are a lot of changes that have happened here in Philadelphia. And I don't think it's as easy as, oh man, they won the Super Bowl. They're obviously going to get back because look how good they were last year. There are a lot of changes here, which I do think leads to some kind of uncertainty. Not that it's like, oh no, the Eagles are going to go from best in the league to, middle of the pack to worst. I mean, that's not going to happen just because of the talent they still have here. But first off, looking at their pass rush, which was one of their strengths, especially near the end of the year, especially in the Super Bowl where they had 16 pressures on Patrick Mahomes in that game. They lost 2 of their 3 most effective pass rushers from last season. Josh Sweat, who led the Eagles with 55 pressures, and then Milton Williams, who was 3rd on the team with 40 pressures. And so they're going to need some of these other guys, with those guys gone, to step up this year. They need Nolan Smith to step up. Jalix Hunt needs to get better. And I think, overall, he was fine last year. He got better later in the season. And so a lot of it comes down to some of these other guys coming in and filling in for these other players who were producing at a high level. And the question for me is, can those guys do it at the same level as a Sweat, as a Milton Williams? It's going to be tough, but that's sort of the big question there. I still think they have a solid interior, with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. They also extended Saquon to a 2-year deal, gave Zach Bond, linebacker, a 3-year deal. They did also lose multiple defensive backs: Isaiah Rodgers, Darius Slay, traded C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And so this is not going to be the same defense as we saw last year. And so that's where, in my mind, I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year. Just my honest opinion. They were 2nd last year. I think they could drop to maybe the 10th to 15th best scoring defense if things don't go, if these new players don't come in and automatically become as good as these other guys, which I don't expect that to happen. The Eagles, though, are a very good team at, finding talent, bringing in new guys, developing talent. So I'm not going to say like, oh, there's no chance they can't be as good. Of course, there's a chance. But just with the change in the pass rush, just with the change in the secondary, I think it's going to be tough to repeat what they did last year defensively, even though I still think they're going to be a good unit. And then if we look offensively, it's pretty much the entirely same group outside of losing right guard Mekhi Becton, who started in 19 games last year at right guard. He is being replaced by Tyler Steen, who was not very good last year. Last year, according to PFF, they had him as a 75th tackle, graded out of 77. And so, when you have one weak link on the offensive line, that can sometimes cause issues. So we'll see if he can take a step forward there. But I think when you look at Jalen Hurts, there's been a ton of discussion about Hurts. Is he being held up by the team around him? I think he's a very good quarterback, and I think he deserves a ton of credit for the way he played to get the Eagles to a Super Bowl. They would not have won the Super Bowl if it wasn't for Jalen Hurts. And even with so much change in his career, just when it came to play callers, offensive coordinators, in 2022, he had Shane Steichen, 2023, Brian Johnson, 2024, Kellen Moore. And in spite of those 3 different coordinators, The Eagles offense, 3rd scoring, 7th scoring, 7th scoring. So the odds of them just taking a step back because they have a new play caller in here, don't think it's going to happen. They're still going to be a top 10 offense with Kevin Patullo coming in as their play caller. First time for him ever calling plays. He's been in Philly for a while now, since 2021, has been the pass game coordinator, and then also was moved up to associate head coach in 2023 and 2024. And so I just think that the Eagles have too much talent offensively to take a big step back with Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, very, very good offensive line. I think this will be a top 10 unit once again. More of my questions are on the defensive side, just because of all the different changes that they have made. Now, here's one thing where I do think it's likely that Jalen Hurts takes a step back. I was looking at some of these turnover-worthy play stats, and if you look at his overall stats in 2024, Jalen Hurts, he did have much better luck when it came to interceptions. In 2023, he had 15 interceptions. In 2024, he had 6 interceptions. But if you look at the turnover-worthy plays, which is measured by PFF, which measures, how many times did a guy put the ball in harm's way that should have been a turnover. Lots of these are, drops by defensive players, and of course, that won't show up in the interceptions. It will show up in turnover-worthy plays. He actually put the ball in harm's way more often in 2024. He had a higher turnover-worthy play rate, 3.2%, compared to 2.3% in 2023. He had more turnover-worthy plays in 2024 at 19. He only had 16 in 2023. So he just got super unlucky in 2023. 16 turnover-worthy plays, 15 interceptions. So only one of his turnover-worthy plays didn't end in interception. If you look at 2024, though, he had 19 turnover-worthy plays, only 6 ended in interceptions. So that's 13 that didn't end in interceptions. And so if I had to guess, I would say that he throws more picks this year, just because I just don't see that that number staying like that. And it's not honestly like he put the ball in harm's way less. It was honestly worse. So that's one area I expect Jalen Hurts to regress. But I still expect this team to be an elite unit. Do I think they're going to return to the Super Bowl? I honestly don't. I just think it's too tough to do that in the NFL. And I think there's enough changes on defense that make me think that they're not going to get back. Not that they don't have the talent to potentially do it. If I just had to guess, that would sort of be my take. So I don't think they're overrated. I do think they're still elite, but it will be tough to get back once again, in my opinion. Now on to Drake Maye and the Patriots. Will Drake Maye lead the Patriots to the playoffs? It has not been very pretty the past couple of years, to put it nicely, for the New England Patriots. The past couple seasons, 31st in scoring offense 2 years ago, 30th last year. So one of the worst offenses back-to-back years. Defensively, 15th the year before, 22nd last year defensively. And I think for Drake Maye, I honestly think that if, even last season as a rookie, if you would have put him on some of these teams that have a lot of the talent around the quarterback, like the Niners, like the Vikings, like the Eagles, and you put Drake Maye in that exact situation, I think that he would take those teams to the playoffs, if I'm being completely honest, because he's a very talented quarterback, and I think that the surrounding cast that he had last year was just one of the worst in the NFL, pretty much in every single area. If you look at the pressure rates he was facing, according to Fantasy Points, minimum 100 dropbacks, he faced the 6th highest pressure percentage in the NFL. So his offensive line was doing him no favors. He was a very accurate quarterback last year, according to Fantasy Points, 12th in accuracy percentage, which measures like highly accurate pinpoint passes, 12th in the NFL, which was just ahead of Matthew Stafford and Jalen Hurts. So Drake Maye, while he didn't light it up last year, he was pretty solid with 15 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, but he was just not helped by the defense. I mean, when you have a defense allowing that many points, it puts the offense consistently in bad positions. You look at his receiving core, leading guy when it came to yards, Hunter Henry, 674. Demario Douglas, next to 621. I do think Douglas is going to be very good. He just needed more help on the offensive line and at receiver. In this offseason, the Patriots made a ton of changes. I mean, they really bolstered the defensive unit, adding Harold Landry, linebacker, 3-year, $45.3 million deal. Robert Spillane, linebacker, 3-year, $37 million deal. Carlton Davis, cornerback, 3-year, $60 million. Milton Williams, DT, 4-year, $104 million. So that defense should be much better. Vrabel is here. He's changing the culture. You can already see it, just all of his press conferences, just the expectation for what he thinks these guys, how they need to operate. And so this defense is going to be much better, no doubt about that. And he got a ton of help offensively. Of course, with Will Campbell coming in, 4th overall, left tackle should be awesome there. And then signing Stephon Diggs. I do wonder, what Diggs will look like after his injury. Can he get back to what we, saw earlier in his career? If he can, I think that it's going to be exciting to see what Maye can do with Stephon Diggs. They also brought in Morgan Moses to right tackle. So they did do a lot to help Drake Maye this offseason. And I think that we should see him take another big step forward in the second season. And you have a play caller in there, Josh McDaniels, who I think is going to be much better than what they had previously. So you have a better offensive line. You have a better wide receiver core. You have a better running back room. Adding running back Travion Henderson from Ohio State in round 2, he looks like he is going to be very effective, especially when it comes to catching the ball. They also drafted wide receiver Kyle Williams, who I think could be solid, and center Jared Wilson in round 3. And so this feels like the beginning of the Patriots starting to try to get back to what they used to be. And I honestly think that there is a chance the Patriots make the playoffs this year, which last year it felt like, there was no hope. I think this is, a 8 to 9 win team. I think they could potentially sneak in. I think it's going to be close. But I really do think that Drake Maye, if he was on one of these other teams with some of the surrounding casts, would be a top 10 quarterback. I think he has that talent. And I think over the next couple of seasons, as they continue to bolster this team, not only this year, but in years in the future, I think that he could push into that top 10 discussion if the Patriots can just figure it out on the other areas of the ball. Now to the final topic today. Will the Broncos win the AFC West? So last year in Sean Payton's second year, they go 10-7 in the first year with Bo Nix at quarterback, which I would say was a success. They went from the 19th best scoring offense in 2023 to the 10th best scoring offense in 2024. Their defense drastically improved from the 27th ranked scoring defense in 2023 to the 3rd best scoring defense in 2024. And their stats last year defensively were crazy. 3rd in scoring allowed, 1st in EPA per play allowed, 1st in EPA per pass allowed, 3rd in EPA per rush. They had the 3rd highest pressure percentage in the NFL, the most sacks in the NFL, 4th highest blitz rate in the NFL, and their best 4 pass rushers are all returning. And you compare that to the Eagles, they're a team that they're coming off the mountain. They just won the Super Bowl. They had to get rid of some of these, veteran guys who were big parts of their unit winning. And I feel like the Broncos are sort of I'm not saying they're going to get to the Eagles level this year. It's just that this is a team that was so good defensively last year, and they didn't lose any really key pieces here defensively. All they did was sort of bolster the unit. So I don't really see this defense taking a big step back, if at all. I think they're still going to be a top 3 to 5 unit. They upgraded at linebacker with Dre Greenlaw. They're bringing back Alex Singleton, from injury. And they're also upgrading at safety with Hufanga, who I think if he can get back to how he used to look with the 49ers, he dealt with some injuries last year, but they bolstered some areas of weakness. And they also brought in Jahdae Barron in round 1, cornerback who can play nickel, who can play outside. And so I just think this is a defense that has a ton of depth. They didn't really lose anyone of importance. And looking at some of their pass rushers last year, John Franklin Myers, Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, Zach Allen, those guys were very effective, and they're all going to be back once again. And so defensively, this should be a unit that could be even better, which is if possible. When you're the best, it's tough to get better than that. So it's, they're going to have to play tough physical football once again, but I think there's no reason to think that the defense can't do that. In the area where I think that the Broncos are going to need to take that step forward to really be able to compete with some of these AFC teams, especially in the West, with the Chiefs being there, their offense just has to get a little bit more explosive, in my opinion. They are overall pretty solid, especially for a rookie quarterback with Bo Nix. 10th best scoring offense, 19th in yards per game, 19th in yards per play, 17th in EPA per pass, 14th in EPA per rush. So they were sort of a middle-of-the-road offense offensively. And Bo Nix, overall stat line, 29 touchdowns, 12 picks. Very good for a rookie quarterback. And I think when you see a guy who's able to just not put the ball in harm's way too often, that's one of the most important things. Because especially when you have a very good defense, if you have Bo Nix playing like that, you saw what it brought them last year, 10-7 and a playoff berth. They, of course, lose that game, but I think it's a very good start for Bo Nix in his rookie season. The few areas where I think the offense could get better, the rushing attack last year. It wasn't great. And they're bringing in RJ Harvey, who I think is going to be very, very good in 2025. Round 2 draft pick. He averaged 6.8 yards per attempt at UCF in his final season and had 22 touchdowns. He is a beast, and I think that we've heard Sean Payton talk about him a ton, and he had Kamara early on. It sounds like RJ Harvey could fit that type of mold, and so I expect him to really take this offense to another level explosively. You're also upgrading at tight end with Evan Ingram. And so there's a few additions there that I think do make this Broncos offense even more exciting. And thankfully for Bo Nix, this offensive line they're all returning. The starters are returning. And last season, they were best in pass block win rate, best in run block win rate in the NFL. So when you have one of the best offensive lines, if not the best, no doubt that helps Bo Nix and what he can do, and they're returning all those guys. So they have a lot of the same players. They've pretty much only gotten better offensively and better defensively. And so I think that this is a team, looking at these AFC West, that is going to get a little bit closer to the Chiefs. And honestly, I wanted to come to the point where I really felt like the Broncos could pull off the upset and win the AFC West. I just don't know that Bo Nix is quite there to be able to take over from Patrick Mahomes. I think that there's a lot of things here that, you could make an argument for it, but I just think I need to see a little more offensively to think that they're going to be able to get past the Chiefs this year, even though I think that they could be a game potentially behind the Chiefs this season. And also one other area I think that Bo Nix needs to improve. He wasn't great under pressure last year. If you look at PFF, minimum 25 dropbacks, he was 32nd in passer rating when pressured at 62.1. And also accuracy-wise, he was 32nd in completion percentage over expected. So he needs to get a little bit more accurate, needs to be a little bit better against pressure. But I do expect, a year 2 jump. He learned the system. He knows what's going on here. And I do think this is going to be a team that could win 11, 12 games. I just have a hard time thinking that the Chiefs aren't going to still be able to win the AFC West. But that is going to be all for today's podcast. If you want to see this more in the future, feel free to subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the post notifications. But I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys next time.